This is GrantTalk, hosted by Libby Hikind, founder and CEO of GrantWatch and author of The Queen of Grants.
Hello, everybody. I'm Libby Hikind, founder and CEO of GrantWatch.com and author of The Queen of Grants, From Teacher to Grant Writer to CEO. And today I am your host on GrantTalk. I am so pleased that you are joining us so that you can hear about United Way. With us is Jessica Safransky Schacht, and she is the CEO of United Way of Racine County, Wisconsin. And what's going to be very interesting today is we've all heard about United Way, but when it comes to grants, a lot of things are local. And let's find out how this subdivision or offshoot of United Way operates and how they're connected to the larger United Way organization. So, Jessica, thank you for joining us today. I'm very pleased to have you.
Thanks for having me.
And tell us, how does it work? There's United Way, there's smaller United Ways in every area across the United States. How does it work?
A lot of people have that question. So United Way is actually a global organization. There's over 1,000 United Ways across the world. Most of the United Ways in our network are located in the United States. And every United Way is hyper-local. So while we're part of a global network, each local United Way is its own 501c3 nonprofit and responds to the specific needs of the community that it serves.
So you're under your own nonprofit organization.
Yeah.
And what do you get from the big picture United Way?
Sure. So we're part of a global brand. That's one of the most recognizable brands in the world. So we definitely benefit from that. And we also benefit from being part of a network of organizations that operate similarly, that we can collaborate with to support our communities, learn from each other, and create the best impact possible.
So people trust you because you have the United Way name. So that is a good thing. I'm sure you get a lot of donations from the community.
You do.
What do you do with those donations?
We invest them in solutions and programs and organizations that are addressing the most pressing needs in our communities and creating impact.
And I see you have a number of grants out right now.
We do. We have a lot going on in United Way of Racine County.
Tell us.
Sure. So we're actually right in the midst of our annual investment process, which is probably what people are most familiar with when you think about a United Way. So we run our annual workplace giving campaigns and receive donations from individuals and corporate partners. And then through our annual investment process, we grant those dollars back out to other organizations in the community. So we're right in the beginning of that phase. We're right at the end of the review process and about to make our funding notifications to organizations that will then receive funding that will begin July 1. And it's either a 1 or a 2-year funding period, depending on the particular programming.
So who is eligible for this grant?
So our annual investment process is open to any nonprofit that serves Racine County residents. Primarily, those are organizations that are located in Racine County, but there are sometimes regional entities like YWCA, for example, that has a larger footprint but serves people in our community. They have to be governed by a volunteer board of directors and have bylaws and pretty typical eligibility requirements when it comes to applying for grants. And then we have a 2-step process for our annual investment. The first is to provide for the organization to provide information about their organization and display their eligibility compliance. And then the second part is actually the program proposals. We fund programs, not organizations, meaning we have a set of established outcomes and indicators that we use to collectively track progress towards those outcomes. And organizations decide where do they fit within that and which of their programs do they feel could help contribute to some collective impact in our community. And then they propose programs for funding that way.
Tell me a program in the past, because I don't want to know one that's applied to you. Something
Sure.
you've funded that stood out.
Wow. We have a lot of really great partners. I think one program that stands out to me is a program that's led by a partner organization called Belief Survivors. they actually have two programs that receive United Way funding. One is sexual assault services, and the other is called SCAN, or Stop Child Abuse and Neglect. And that program goes into schools throughout our entire county and educates children about how to keep themselves safe and what to do if they feel like they may be in an unsafe situation and they need to talk to an adult about it. And I think what stands out to me about that is two things. One, just the breadth of the impact that they have in the community. They're going into dozens and dozens of schools multiple times in the course of the school year. And the other is I have kids that are elementary school age, and they've then had SCAN visitors come to their classrooms, and they've come home and be able to tell me what they learned and have practiced it. And it just gives me a peace of mind that not only the programs are working, but that it's serving everybody in our community.
I love it. It's unfortunate that there's a need for that, but there is. What about faith-based organizations? Can they apply to the United Way of Racine County?
They can. We actually have a couple of faith-based partners that receive funding for programming. One is John the 23rd Educational Center, and they offer support for middle and high school students in the form of some social groups and some tutoring and academic support.
I remember years ago I met this man that was writing children's books to help children be aware of who they should not spend any time with and how they should get away. And he was writing them culturally sensitive to a community.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was very interesting because the way it's spoken about differs in different communities.
Absolutely.
And he was being very sensitive to that. And he had asked for contributions. And it was really a worthwhile endeavor. And so it's good to hear that. And you're doing that on a local level. So it would be culturally acceptable depending on which community it's for. So that's really very good. Do you think that your application is similar to other United Way applications?
I think it is. I think there's a lot of similarities between United Ways because we're part of a network. And so we share and learn from each other all of the time. And we are in a constant state of continuous improvement. So we're already thinking about for our next funding cycle, what are things that we want to continue? Where might we want to make some adjustments? And a lot of the base for starting those changes is reaching out to other United Ways and saying, how are you handling this? And are you funding anything that's similar? And how can we learn from each other and collaborate?
Jessica, tell me about the mistakes that you find in grant applications.
I think one of the biggest mistakes that we see is a lack of continuity or connection between the program activities that are described in the application, the budget that's asking for the resources, and then the proposed outcomes. When the review panel can't see like a clear connection between those elements, that's where we tend to see proposals receive a lowered evaluation score.
I talk about in my book, mapping, to let everything just flow all the way from the needs, the goals, the objectives, activities, evaluation, and budget. And of course, in line with the application, because you can't write in a vacuum. It has to, your mission has to be in line with the mission and vision of the funding source. So you see that as well. What happens to those applications?
Well, it depends on the fund. We have multiple funding opportunities. So for some of our funds, we're able to say, we can't provide funding at this time, and here's the rationale, and you're welcome to reapply if you feel that you have a program that would meet the funding requirements. Sometimes for our annual investment process, there may be one part of the proposal that's a little unclear, and we can reach out, get some clarification, and still make a funding recommendation, and then continue to work with that grantee over the funding cycle to help them better tell their story and demonstrate the impact that they're having so that they have success in their current funding cycle and also increased likelihood of success for future funding requests.
So sometimes the application, the whole idea, the concept is great, but something's off. It's a little thing. So you'll let them know they'll reapply.
Yes.
If they apply early enough and you get a chance to screen their application, will you let them reapply within that time period?
So we just had a fund that we expended the rest of the dollars out just about a month ago. It was our Equity Innovation Fund, and through that, we funded about $1.9 million to a total of 39 projects. And it was pretty incredible endeavor over a 2-year period. And in that fund in particular, we were working with a lot of grassroots organizations and entities that hadn't historically applied for or received funding from our United Way. And so we built the funding process to account for that. We wanted to work on increasing equity through the work that was done with the funding, but also increase equity in the access to the funds themselves. And so we instituted some things like a mandatory pre-application meeting where we just sat with the organization and had a conversation to really hear what their idea was, and then from there, give them some pointers on the proposal itself to say, make sure that you talk about that thing that you just told us. That's really powerful, and the review panel will want to know about that, or add more details.
This idea that you have of this pre-funding meeting, is that happening in other United Ways as well?
I think it does happen in some United Ways. I think across the network, we're seeing a real shift towards an increase in trust-based philanthropy practices. And I think in some communities, United Ways may be seen as this kind of transactional entity, whereas we really attempt to and pride ourselves on being a collaborative partner. So funding is part of what we do, but it's not the only thing that we do. And we need our partner organizations just as much as they need us. And so we're really looking at how do we find success together so that our community is better off.
Sounds like you're doing a lot of capacity building.
We do.
Well, so we know the mistakes. Any applications that stand out because they include something different than others?
Yeah, I think anytime an application can provide a story, a success story, or an example of impact that has some quantitative data, right? The numbers are important, but also the qualitative part, that the data that's a little bit more difficult to wrap up in a neat little bow, but really demonstrates why the program is so important. So when you can see the so what, so why does it matter if a kid has a place to go after school? Or why does it matter if a woman has access to shelter when she's fleeing domestic violence? Connecting the impact of the work to the impact that it has on a particular individual and then by the community at large really is powerful in an application.
Great advice. Great advice. So I want to tell all our listeners and our viewers that if you want to hear more stories like this, you need to subscribe so we can continue. It's free. Just hit the subscribe button on YouTube, on Spotify, Apple, or iHeartRadio so that we know that you're out there and we want to have more people come and speak. We're talking to the people behind the grants, and we also talk to people who receive grants. Now, if you're a nonprofit organization or a business or an individual that won a grant that you found on GrantWatch, we will send you this latte mug, and we'll also invite you to come on GrantTalk and tell your story as well. So thank you so much, Jessica. I hope that your organization continues to do the great work that you do. Can you tell us how GrantWatch has helped you?
Awareness. I think we all are assuming that everybody knows who we are and what we're doing, right? And in fact, there's always more people that need to find out and need to have access. So anywhere that we can get the word out about the opportunity is always appreciated. And having a source that people respect is really important.
And that's what GrantWatch was built, to level the playing field for all organizations and individuals and businesses that want to know what grants are available. And so we're glad to display your grants and keep sending them to us, keep funding, and keep providing this capacity building to the nonprofit organizations. And thank you so much for today.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to GrantTalk, powered by GrantWatch. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to this GrantWatch channel. Please consider subscribing to GrantWatch.com And you can find the book, The Queen of Grants, by going to grantwatch.com/book. Thank you again for spending your time with us.